What does box noodles, a piano, Dionne Warwick, the LaBelles, Sesame Street, Whitney Houston, David Bowie, TV commercials, The Wiz, and a Mercedes Benz have to do with Luther Vandross? Stick around for 10 little known facts about Luther, aka Luther Vandross.
Disclaimer. This video may contain copyrighted material, the use of which may have not been specifically authorized by the copyright owner. Under Section 107 of the Copyright Act of 1976, allowance is made for fair use purposes, such as criticism, comment, news report, teaching, scholarship, education, and research. Fair use is permitted by copyright statute that may otherwise be infringing.
Luther Vandross was born Luther Ranzoni Vandross on April 20th, 1951. And remember that box noodles that I just mentioned to you earlier? Well, the middle name actually came from the brand Ranzoni. So according to Luther, during the time that he was about to be born, his parents had not came up with a middle name. His father, as far as I can tell, I did some research, was named Luther Vandross Sr., and he had no middle name. So they decided they needed to come up with a middle name just to, have some distinction between the two. So they didn't have any idea of what name they were going to come up with until they heard an actual commercial either on the TV or on the radio for Ranzoni. Excuse me, I said that wrong earlier. Ranzoni noodles, and they decided that this was going to be creative and good, and nobody had that name. And I ain't never heard nobody named Ranzoni. I'm gonna be honest with you. And throughout the years, affectionately, Luther actually went by Ron or Ronnie to his family members. So, but yeah, them noodles and a loofah, yeah, they got something in common. Luther was a talented child. At the age of 3 years old, he taught himself how to play the piano by ear. So I had no clue. I don't know about y'all, but I had no clue that the voice, Luther Vandross, knew how to play the piano very well and was self-taught on top of that. One of Luther's favorite artists was none other than Miss Dionne Warwick, who's pictured here. He loved Dionne so much that he actually remade a few of her songs. One being Anyone Who Had a Heart, which I was familiar with that because that's like a pretty famous Dionne Warwick song. But I did not know A House Is Not a Home was actually Dionne's song first. I was mind blown because the way that Luther sung that song, it sounded like that song was written for him. And yeah, I was blown, y'all. That one took me aback a little bit. I had to clench my pearls. But anywho, him and Dionne became close friends, and they were friends up until his passing. And they actually ended up like hosting the Soul Train Awards back in the day and everything else like that. So talking about dreams coming true, baby. Now, besides Dionne, there was also another musical influence that he loved, and that was the LaBelles. He actually met the LaBelles backstage of one of their performances back in the day, and then went on to actually start the first LaBelle fan club and become the president of the LaBelle fan club as well. So yeah, him and Patty loved each other until the day he passed. As you guys were aware, that they had a very close relationship, and he loved LaBelle since they were Patti LaBelle with Cindy Bird song before Diana Ross snatched her away from Patty. That's why they was beefing for years. We'll get to that in another episode, but yeah. Pictured below, right over here on the right hand side, standing up while everybody's sitting down, is Luther, and he's actually on Sesame Street. He was on the first episode of Sesame Street with his then group called Shades of Jade. They actually appeared throughout the season. He said the first season, he said, it was just an opportunity for them to get exposure. Eventually, of course, they would break up soon after this, and everybody would go their separate ways. But can you believe, like, Lufa was ahead of his time? Like, he was on Sesame Street with Oscar the Grouch and fucking Big Bird. Like, goddamn, legendary. Pictured here is a very young teenage Whitney Houston, which is down at the bottom here, Luther Vandross over in the corner, and her cousin Dionne Warwick. Now, this actually has to do with her mother, Cissy Houston. So Cissy Houston actually introduced Whitney Houston and Luther to each other because she used Luther as well as Whitney for background vocals for several artists. I believe Dionne may have been one of the people. Don't quote me on that one, but I know for sure Miss Chaka Khan has confirmed that none other than Luther and Miss Whitney Houston did background vocals for, I think, Hot Papillion for her. I need to double check that. And I do apologize. The song was named Papillion Hot Butterfly. I messed that all the way up, y'all. My bad. But you can definitely hear Luther, Cissy Houston, and Whitney Houston in the background vocals of that song if y'all go and pull it up on any other streaming sources, or you know where to pull the song up. But yes, Chaka Khan, Papillion, aka Hot Butterfly, and they were singing. I mean, y'all gotta understand, the 70s and the 80s was a time to be alive, especially for them vocals. Especially for them vocals. Over in the corner there, it's none other than the late legendary David Bowie. And over here on the right hand side, that is with the peach shirt, that is Luther. So this picture was taken roughly around 1974-75. The story goes as such. Luther went in to visit one of his friends from school, which was by the name of Carlos, who was then working in Bowie's band. And they were at the time composing, Carlos and others were composing the song Young American, and there was just a piece that was missing. Luther ended up just kind of singing out some stuff for the song, and Bowie heard it, and the rest was history. Bowie ended up taking him on his first tour as a background singer. And also during the tour, Luther actually started to have a fear of flying because of all the turbulence and stuff from getting on and off the planes, and it was a mess. So after touring with Bowie for a while, Luther actually sung jingles for multiple companies, including Burger King, KFC, NBC, GE or General Electric, Juicy Fruit Gum, Pepsi Cola, and Mountain Dew. So I did not know that Luther actually wrote one of my favorite songs from The Wiz, which is called Everybody Rejoice or Brand New Day. He actually wrote it for the stage play The Wiz, and then that same song was then used in the movie featuring Diana Ross here in the scene where they were singing that song. So, and Luther not only wrote just for The Wiz, but he also wrote for Aretha Franklin. One of Aretha Franklin's earlier hits in the 80s, if I'm not mistaken, which was Jump to It. So the jump, jump, jump to it. That was actually him in the background. In the background. For Gregory Hines, they actually had a duo together called Nothing's Better Than Love. That song, that's that. We call it down here in Florida, that funk. That funk. He wrote a song for Whitney Houston on the I'm Your Baby Tonight album. It was called Who Do You Love? I never heard of it, I'm sorry. He also wrote a song called Fascination for David Bowie on the Young Americans album. This was also during the time that, of course, he was on tour with David Bowie as well. And also, that Young Americans album, it's got my favorite David Bowie song, which is Fame. That song, it was, ain't nothing but the funk. Ain't nothing but the funk. So I try to keep things light, real light, but this one was kind of sad. Not kind of, it is sad. So here, pictured here above, is Luther Vandross's Mercedes-Benz. This happened basically on January 12th of 1986. So the story goes, Luther Vandross was actually driving a new artist by the name of Jimmy that he had just signed to a deal, as well as Jimmy's manager and brother were in the back seat. And Luther was going about anywhere from 48 to 50 miles an hour in a 35 zone. And somehow, some way, the car ended up veering over into the wrong lane, causing a 3-car crash. So that was one of the 3 cars. There was another car I didn't have pictured here that was also in the wreck. Everybody was able to make it out alive except for Jimmy, unfortunately. The other side of the car was just so destroyed and messed up. I did not want to put this on TikTok to kind of like be a Debbie Downer, but it was so serious that back in 1986, the courts were actually charging Luther Vandross with vehicular manslaughter. He ended up in later that year in December getting off with doing community service and paying for everything for all the people that were involved, all the medical expenses and everything like that, and damages that of the people that were involved in the crash. Later on, Jimmy's family ended up suing him for the civil suit, and with that civil suit, they ended up getting $630,000, which would be the equivalent of roughly about $1.7 million in today's money. And I did not know this. Supposedly, this bothered Luther for years, and he actually ended up not having a license for a year because they ended up suspending it during this time frame. Yeah, sad. So that concludes our 10 little known facts about Luther Vandross. So if you want more little known facts about other artists, please comment down below an artist that you would like me to do another 10 little known facts of. Peace.